What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Geeks and Company. My name is JS. This is my buddy Jeff, and that's right. You're watching another episode of the After Show for Star Trek: Strange New Worlds, Season 2, Episode 2.
We're back in 2 and 2.
How you doing, Jeff?
I'm well. How are you? I'm not
doing,
joking. I stopped watching it 4 minutes ago. I worked overtime at work, got home as quick as I can, spent 20 minutes making food, immediately put the episode on. I literally just finished it. So
because you don't look like a guy that just finished crying, but I'll take your word for it. I'll take your word for it. I see you're wearing your fancy Captain Pike uniform.
It seemed appropriate since he was back on the show this week, even though he still didn't have a whole lot to do, same as he kind of didn't last week. I did find out why he wasn't in last week's episode. Apparently, they had a baby. Him and his partner, they said, had a new baby, so that's why he was offset, spending time with the new Bambino. So
I did not know.
So that's why he was not in the first episode. And he's in this episode and he has some key scenes in this episode, but he still doesn't, like, this was not his episode. So the first episode was Spock's episode. This episode was clearly Una's episode. So I'm hoping we get some heavy Pike action coming up. Because let's be fair,
you know what? Let's back up for a quick second here. Let's go through a couple formalities, folks. First of all, if you're watching this right now and you have not subscribed to our channel, please take a minute, click the subscribe button. It's completely free. We do these after shows for all types of different shows. We're also doing one for Secret Invasion. Unfortunately, we did film that yesterday, but it's probably not going to come out until after you see this. But either way, we are doing a Secret Invasion after show. We might do a Witcher after show. I don't know if we're going to maybe do like part 1 and part 2, since all 4 episodes are coming out. We don't know. Make sure you subscribe. You're not going to want to miss it. And if you click the notification bell, it'll always make sure you get alerted anytime we upload a brand new video, or we go live for our podcast every Thursday, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on the Geeks and Company. Now, spoiler warning, folks, because we are talking about a show that literally came out this morning. If you haven't watched the episode, go watch it, then come back and watch this. Now, how much did you cry in this episode, Jeff?
I did not. I didn't. Don't get me wrong. It was a fantastic episode. I remember last week when you were all like, "Oh, stealing the Enterprise has been done so many times." A trial episode is a trope that almost every TV series has 100%. To engage in at some point or another.
Star Trek has done over and over and over.
Was this the best of all those different trial shows?
Yes, 100%. I think so.
For me, Measure of a Man.
Okay, that was a great one, but this one's
good. It's very, very good.
Bring that up because that was going to be my comparison, right? I was going to say this episode actually reminds me a lot of Measure of a Man in how they end up using the law to their advantage.
Yeah. But the argument was still in that episode, just like it is in this episode, it is the content of our character. It is not
correct.
Batman Begins, it always reminds me of this. It's not who I am underneath, it's what I do that defines me. Well, I don't necessarily agree with that. In this case, it is very clear that that's the argument that was made for Data in Measure of Man, and the argument was made for Una, and that helps sway the Judge Advocate General's office to at least look at the case on a specific scale as opposed to a broader scale. Because I think they even said when they rendered judgment, if we were still looking at this at a broad scale, it still would not be cool. But looking at this individually, not guilty. And she has asylum now in Starfleet, whatever that is going to mean.
Right. So
you cried. Did you get emotional for this episode?
What about that? No, I didn't cry. Okay. Una hasn't really gotten an episode so far. Right. I mean, in all of season 1, there was never one that really focused on her. And let's be honest, in Discovery season 2, she was in like 2 episodes, right? So she got the shaft in that. So out of all the characters, I feel like she's the one that's gotten the less attention and the less focus. And she finally gets her episode. And it's a fantastic episode. It really shows a range of acting in the relationship between her and her friend, which we're implying they were childhood friends. That's all we really know.
Well, during the stories that she was telling, the boy that she was helping was her best friend's cousin, and that had the same
would have
last
been
name.
her best
so
friend.
that was her best, her best friend's cousin. So we
so
know they grew up together. We know that the
Yeah.
lawyer's an Illyrian. We know all that, and why her lawyer took the case in the first place, because she wants to fight for Illyrian rights and such. So, all that's fantastic, and I think it speaks to the heart of Trek, right? That's what Trek is all about at the end of the day.
100%. And as much as, you know, in the past few years, Trek has turned a little bit more to action,
right,
than it used to, just because, well, it's easier now, right? Explosions are easier, and effects are easier, and so it's easier to turn to action to boost your show.
Right.
This was not an action show. There was zero action in this.
None whatsoever.
But it probably was one of the more Trek episodes that I've seen from Trek in a long time.
It's a very, very, very Trek episode. Yeah. It's just, again, like, we got her on the ropes. It looks like she's going to be guilty. You know, the Vulcan Admiral comes in with a question at the very end that's just stumping everybody. And then, oh, wait, there's this one obscure law in the book that just ties everything up in a neat bow, and everybody's not guilty, and everybody gets back the way it was. And I was like,
yeah, that was very Measure of a Man.
Like, I get it. I get it. But yeah, at least with Measure of a Man, at the end of it, the judge was like, I don't know if he's real or not. I just know that we're not really qualified to say whether he is or not. So we're going to, you know what I mean? Like, it wasn't so much like she was on trial for sedition for 20 years. Data was just going to be like taken apart by some dude, like he was like a, you know.
So you're right. But I think
the stakes, I feel like, were a little higher on this. Sedition's not. Do you know what would happen right now if you got charged with sedition? It's one of the few laws you could be put to death for. Like, really, sedition's right up there with treason. It's like, you are essentially they plotting against the government is So that's what I'm saying, right? So that was no small thing that they were trying to get her on, that if she'd been found guilty, that's And then again, the spoilers, the trailers kind of gave it away, right? Like, we knew it was going to work out because we know she goes back in the ship because we saw her in the trailers and blah, blah, blah. So we know all that's happening. But in this case, was the journey worth the destination for you, JS? Did this make it so you're okay with the fact that they showed her in the trailer, even so you knew she was going to be okay?
Well, you knew she was gonna be back? Really, because I'm still not 100% happy with the resolution of the episode. Right. So, I mean, again, we're spoiling it, folks.
No,
like, if you haven't seen it, this is your own fault if you're still watching us here.
That's right.
You know, at the end, I agree with the not guilty verdict based on what was said in at the end there, right? When they did the closing statements, and I think you couldn't give any other verdict than not guilty. But how does that mean she's still in Starfleet? Like, she's not guilty of sedition, but she's still an Illyrian, and she's still genetically modified. And it's still illegal by Starfleet. So although they're saying, okay, fine, we're not going to put you in jail, but we're going to leave you in command of a starship?
Well, this is what I'm talking about. This was this obscure law that the lawyer found in this big, fat, by the way, a book. Can we talk about it?
Yeah.
Like Trek, a book.
An actual book.
And not a book like Kirk had, where it was like this very rare first edition thing or whatever. Like,
it was like a brand new book.
This is just a book. Yeah. Like, it's just, we still print books and shit. Like, that was so weird. It took me a minute. I'm like, what's wrong? And I'm like, she's got a book. Why does she have a book? When was the last time we saw a book in this? Anyways, sorry. Because whatever that law was, it was the third part of what Una had did, is she had sought asylum, not from the Federation, which I think at that point she would be dishonorably discharged and she would be allowed to stay in Federation space. She was granted asylum from Starfleet. Because Starfleet is the one granting her asylum.
But Starfleet's an organization. It's not like, they're not a nation, right? They're not like the Federation is a federation of planets. They can grant you asylum. Not a Starfleet, or like a military organization to boot.
I mean, at the end of the day,
I understand that whole.
I think technically, I'm sure we could get into I'm not a lawyer, you're not a lawyer, who the hell knows? But to me, that's why she gets to stay in Starfleet. And they were cagey about that. She's not granted asylum by the Federation. She's granted asylum by Starfleet in particular. So that means that that's why she gets to stay in Starfleet. Like I said, it's silly almost, like,
because
all the drama was great, but it was just
part
like
of the Federation, right? They've accepted the Illyrians in the Federation. They've said that, even though they faced extreme discrimination against them,
right.
They were still part of the Federation. They just weren't allowed to be
provisional members or something like that. Yeah.
They just weren't allowed to be in Starfleet, right?
And that's why it had to be Starfleet regulations that stated. And they kept on kind of bouncing back and forth between Federation and Starfleet, like between, like, who started, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's too much of it for me was like, this is just too convenient to be able to. There were better ways to get to the end of this episode and have her exonerated than I think the way they chose, because they wanted to be clever about it by setting that all up. She tells all these stories about her persecution and her going to Starfleet to get away from the persecution and fear for her life and her family and all that jazz.
But that's all, like, that was the setup, right?
100%.
Yeah,
100%. But at the end of the day, it just felt too, like, I don't know the word I'm looking for. Not tropey, but it just felt like too, like, convenient, I guess, at the end of the day. Like,
I mean, you're right, but you have to keep, okay, but the words you said last week, you have to keep in mind, and you have to always remember, this is an episodic show,
for sure,
right? The story,
they gotta get it all in 50 minutes. They gotta
get it all in 50 minutes.
Yeah.
Or in this case, I think was 48 minutes this week. Whatever the case was.
Yeah, I've got 56 minutes actually for this guy.
56 minutes.
Now that's including credits, but 56 minutes is what I got. Yeah,
it was a long episode. 52.
Yeah.
So, you know, they have to keep it all in the one. And I think by doing it the way they did it, it gets us to that end point with impact quickly.
Right.
That's how I feel about it.
Yes.
You know
this
what I mean?
is a classic, the message trek.
Yes.
Right. This is what this entire thing was about. Persecution is bad. Prejudice is bad. Racism is bad. Judging people for things that are beyond their control is bad. All those things are bad. Gene Roddenberry is, I'm sure, just doing, you could probably jet power a city with how much Gene Roddenberry is probably spinning in his grave after this particular episode, because this episode painted Starfleet like a bunch of bigoted, racist assholes for having this law on the books, regardless of why they think genetically modified people should not be in. The eugenics wars were a long ass time ago. Like, the one person even says, like, you're playing God. I'm like, do people in the 23rd century still use the phrase playing God when it comes to eugenics? Like, that's such a weird turn of phrase that even now seems antiquated. I would have thought 300 years from now it'd be even more so. But anyways, regardless. Hey, the acting was fantastic. The acting
was amazing.
Yeah. I
don't know who that actress is. I've never seen her before, but I'm in love.
No. She killed it.
I want to see her in something else because she killed it.
No. Everybody killed it. Pike, the other captain, Beta, that was doing the prosecution. Yeah, everybody's just nailed it.
Which is funny that they would bring her in for that, considering, or did they show us that she was a love or a love interest, that him and her had a thing only for the fact that she was going to try her in this season? Or
well, I know there's
are they now using her that way because, we already have this captain that we know, let's make her the
I would think it had to be to have that strife between them type of thing. Like, it helps to add and build on the tension and such. And I don't think she's done. I think because I remember a scene specifically in the trailer where her and Pike like kiss or whatever. So I mean, I think there's, because at first when that trailer first came out, it looked like he was kissing Una, and everybody's like, ooh. But then when we went back and watched it, we're like, no, that's not Una. It's that captain from the very first scene in the very first episode. I don't know. Clearly there's no law against fraternizing, but I don't know that anybody like outside of the two of them would know that they were bumping uglies like a year ago, right?
Probably not. I'm not.
It just adds tension for them, right?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. I'm talking about the studio. Did the studio 100% set it up that way, or did they just use that character ball because now we've already introduced that character?
Well, probably a bit of both, right?
Fair enough.
She's on hand. We've got her fitted for uniform. She knows the track. She knows the crew. She knows the set. She knows where we are, and we get to have all this added built-in tension between her and Pike. Especially since Pike had nothing to do last week. So yeah, I'm telling you what, man, I put the daddy shirt on for a reason. Okay.
You liked the episode.
I did like the episode.
That's good
but for me, it was on par with last week's, if I'm being honest with
you. No, not for me. This was a way better episode than last week for me. Not again. I want to say last week's episode was bad. It was an average episode of Trek to me, right? Where for this week was a good episode.
Yeah, for me, last week's episode, other than Pike, obviously, and Una, but for me, last week's episode was much more of a ensemble episode, whereas this episode was really just Una, the prosecutor, or sorry, the defendant lawyer, and then a bit of La'an and a little bit of Pike. But for me, mostly it's like, so it was very, very just a couple of people centric, and I love the crew so much. I'd like to see it when there's like a broader spectrum. But you're right, the way the episode was built out and the fact that it's such a classic trial.
And the La'an thing about thinking she's responsible,
she's the one that did it,
going to Uhura and Uhura being like, I can't do that, dude. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Right? Like, we're not like that, we're better than this. I there were a lot of little things thrown into this episode to really tie it all together. You know, and we don't see a lot of that in Trek anymore. And this, for me, this could have been an episode that Gene Roddenberry wrote for the original series.
That you and I can disagree on, and that's okay. That's fine. But I will say, I'm wondering if they're going to drop this entire. Like, do you think that's all we're going to hear about as far as like Illyrian rights and getting the laws over? Like, do you think this is going to be something that's going to crop up again at some point, or do you think they made the point with this episode and that's going to be the last we hear of it?
I mean, we're going to hear about Illyrians again in however long this show runs. Right? With how good the show is, I wouldn't be surprised if it goes 5, 6, 7 seasons.
Right.
So are we going to hear about Illyrians again? For sure we are. Is it going to be a main plot point? Probably not. You know, something may happen where it becomes, you know, the I don't want to call it the villain of the week because they're not necessarily going to be the villain, but the story of the week. We may have stories of the week about Illyrians here and there throughout the next, 4 or 5 seasons, but
sure.
I don't know. I think it was a way to interject a message without beating you over the head with the message.
Now, let me ask you this. Would you had rather, based on last season's ending, the cliffhanger, like, would you had rather this was the premiere?
Yeah.
Just so there wouldn't have been the gap between when she's arrested and when it's resolved.
Yeah, I think
like the gap is let's have a whole season break and then let's steal the Enterprise and then we finally resolve it. If we don't want to make this like serialized or arc, I would have thought like classic 2-part Trek style.
Yeah.
You end the season with a cliffhanger. You begin the next season with the resolving of the cliffhanger.
Yeah.
And they didn't do that. They squashed this episode in between. I would have preferred this had been the premiere.
Yes, me too.
And then they steal the Enterprise. Because that way there's no more of this overhanging tension and this, you know what I mean? Like you get it out of the way and because it's all shot. It's all in the can. They can, and nothing that happened, I feel like last week kind of had any effect on this week. So just swap them. Like I don't, other than Pike had to go get the lawyer for Una, right? Other than them two, I guess not.
So that was the weird thing for me is in episode 1, Pike goes and gets the lawyer for Una, and then they steal the Enterprise, and all that happens.
Right.
And then in episode 2, he leaves to go get the lawyer.
Right.
And then comes back like nothing's happened. Like the Enterprise hasn't just been stolen.
That's right. We just hit the big giant reset button on there, right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
so I would have preferred it be episode 1.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah. Okay. Me too.
And then episode 2 could have been you start it the same way as episode 1, and then he leaves. But when he leaves, you stay with the Enterprise.
That's right.
That would have been a neat thing, right? So that you know that those two things happen at the same time.
That's right.
But
yeah, no, I get it. It is what it is. It definitely would have been, I think, better. But I mean, I had to ask the question. So here we are. So now, like, other than the Gorn, I kind of feel like all the sort of the loose ends that were kind of hanging over from last season are kind of all tied up now. La'an's back on the ship. Una's been cleared. Pike is cleared. That's not hanging over their heads. You know what I mean? So now we just have the threat of the Gorn, who
we know are coming back.
We know are coming back. That's right. And then we saw a little blip of that at the end of of last week's episode. So get ready for some Gorn war. I think that's.
I think if we go from episodes like this to episodes where we do have more ship battles and action, you're giving a little bit of everything for everybody, right? So
I think because we got to get Kirk, right? We know Kirk's coming, so
we know he's coming back. So yeah,
gotta be here soon. There's only 8 episodes left. Gotta be here soon.
That's right. That's right.
I need some Captain Kirk.
Well, Kirk, why don't you sign us off?
I thank you so much for watching our program. Tune in next week when we take on the Gorn.
Well, we don't know that yet, but
we're hoping. We're gonna cross our fingers. There just better be some more goddamn Pike, and let's get some Kirk in there too. Hell, just throw them all in there.
Hey,
who cares?
Make sure you stay geeky, everybody. We'll see you next week for another episode of the After Show. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, you gotta get that up. You gotta throw that.
There you go.
Yeah.